People of Earth, my name is Colin, your name is Audience, and welcome back to this. You're wondering why I am quite sweaty right now, or I look sweaty. I don't look that bad. I just got done VR boxing, so that's why I'm a little moist. That's disgusting. For those of you who pay very, very close attention to the vlog series, which I'm not sure as many of you, regardless, you'll notice that I didn't put out a vlog last week, and that's because we just had a lot going on. Like I've mentioned before, we were in the middle of a 3-week period where it was just kind of go, 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 not a whole lot of downtime, and when there was downtime, it was not like at home. Like that's typically how I end kind of a weekend of work, is by putting together the vlog and posting it. But in this 3-week period, that didn't really exist. So just kind of a mess all around, but a good mess. And by mess, I don't mean unorganized or a disaster. I just mean very busy time. So a little bit of a summary of what went on. Obviously, from the last time we spoke, which was, I believe, right after, perhaps, week of softball ended. And then going into graduation. Graduation went pretty much flawlessly. There weren't really any issues. Any issues that did arise, we were able to either sidestep, and while that's not necessarily always the right decision to make, sidestepping an issue, when you're putting on something like a graduation where it's really important that all of the content is there, maybe it doesn't work out in the way that you want it to, but it's important to just have something, if that makes sense. Rather than worrying about, one of our cameras, well, a prime example is we were doing, I believe it was the College of Business, was the last ceremony that we did, the last graduation ceremony that we did. And 2 of our cameras got dropped by our TriCaster, and we're not entirely sure what happened. Pretty confident that it's something to do with just the fact that the TriCaster had been kind of getting pounded in terms of the hours that it was on that day. It was upwards of probably 8 or 9 hours that thing was on for. So we're guessing that was probably the issue. We haven't diagnosed it because, again, it's not something that happens all the time. But if it turns out that it is something that happens frequently, then we'll have to dive deeper into it. But back to what I was saying, we dropped 2 cameras, and rather than saying, well, shoot, we have to stop what we're doing, drop everything, get those 2 cameras back up, and then resume coverage, it's more important to finish out the event. If you still have 2 cameras working, do what you can, rather than having nothing and kind of messing that up. Because as much as it is important to have as much coverage as possible and deliver the product that you said you were going to deliver, in my experience, which granted is not as much as some other people, again, I graduated college in 2022, so I haven't been doing this super long, but from my perspective, I think generally speaking, people will be happy and more understanding if you can say, hey, we finished out the ceremony, we dropped 2 of our cameras so we don't have all the angles, but we still made it look good. Rather than saying, we missed 10 people receiving, 10, 20 people receiving their diplomas because we felt the need to go in and fix these 2 cameras. That is my personal outlook on things. Again, that differs person to person, gig to gig. But I think that holds pretty true for sports too, is that the aspect of actually covering it is typically more important, or I put more value in the coverage aspect than, than fixing any issues that may arise or needing to be that 100%, If it dips below 20%, then maybe think about it. Like if you're only able to deliver 20% of what you said you were going to deliver for a long period of time, then obviously you need to, A, rethink your planning process to hopefully prevent things from happening like that. But also just think about whether or not you need to stop and fix that and then go back to the coverage. Typically, again, with sports, if we drop a camera, if a battery runs out, et cetera, somebody's got to go to the bathroom, medical emergency, whatever curveballs you get, the typical way we operate is we continue with the coverage minus that one aspect, and we are flexible and we work with it how we can. So that's basically how graduation went really, really good. Only had a few issues, but again, we sidestepped the ones that we could, and the ones that we couldn't, we just fixed. Plain and simple. Basically, the turnaround between finishing up graduation and leaving for baseball tournament back down in Wilmington was, I believe, 2 days. We finished the final ceremony on Saturday evening, around, I think it was 4, was when we departed. So I got back home around 7ish. Had Sunday off, had Monday off, and then Tuesday drove down early to Wilmington. Set everything up on Tuesday. Game started on Wednesday. Went great. I directed a game on Wednesday. I'm still trying to nail down exactly how many games I directed, but I did a decent amount of directing there. I was one of the main 2 directors, which is kind of a big deal for me because A, it shows that I'm doing a good job with directing, which is a thumbs up, and B, it shows that I'm now viewed as more as that is what they're going to assign me, right? I can still do replay, I can still do graphics, I can still do camera, and I think it's recognized that I'm decent at all of those. And this goes back to that whole Avatar airbending, replay bending thing that I did a couple weeks ago. But it comes back to just them going, okay, this is something that he's able to do. And typically, from my experience, directing is a harder role to fill a lot of the time. Not to say that any position is a whole lot easier than any other position. They all have their quirks. They all have the different situations in which they're hard versus easy. But typically, in my experience, fewer people that are on the crews that we typically work with not are capable of directing, but have experience directing and want to do it, basically. A lot of people are happy with doing just camera, and that's cool. That's fine. Doing camera's awesome. Some people want to just do graphics, some people just want to do replay, and that's awesome too. Do what you love. That's at least my standpoint on it, and I love doing just about all of them. I will say I've been a little bit burnt out on replay recently, just because for a while, like especially towards the end of last year, it felt like I was not necessarily a one-trick pony, but I did a lot of replay. And sometimes it's not easy, and sometimes I think more than anything, I'm not going to dive too deep into this just because I don't feel like it. But a lot of the time, it's a double-edged sword of being exposed to directing and getting to direct more is similar to, I think, how a lot of people feel about driving. Is when you're driving, you feel in control, you can make the changes you need to change, you can be comfortable and drive the way that you are comfortable being in a car. Some people, when they're in the passenger seat, hate that and have a really, really hard time experiencing that. And that's understandable. It's a control thing. I recognize that a lot. That's kind of how I feel about directing a little bit. Is people do things differently than I do, and that's fine. I'm not going to sit there and tell them that they're doing things wrong. But it's a lot harder to watch mistakes happen from just one seat away than sitting in front of it, controlling it myself. I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I don't make mistakes. But I will say that having the experience directing and doing things my way and knowing that I'm trusting myself a little bit to be on top of things and following my practice, it's a lot harder to sit next to that director doing replay and go and know that something I would be doing right now is not what they're doing. And that's, again, it's not that I'm better than anybody. It's not that I have more experience than anybody. It's not that I'm a better director than anybody, because that's simply not true. I made a bunch of mistakes during this baseball tournament. I made a bunch of mistakes during the softball tournament. Am I beating myself up over them? Not necessarily. I'm still relatively new. I do think that some of them were silly mistakes that shouldn't have been made. But again, new to it, gaining more experience. And to be honest, I directed softball. Baseball's may not seem like it, but it's pretty different. Specifically, the biggest mistake that I made, and took me a while to get into the groove of it, was pickoff plays. Those don't exist in softball, or they're very rare in softball. I've heard it both ways. I'm pretty sure they just don't exist. But in baseball, very real. So I was, cruising along in softball, had everything set, and then I came into baseball and was almost trying to direct it like softball without even worrying about the pickoff play, and it caught up to me, where I just was missing a punch a lot of the time to get that pickoff play on screen, basically. So, but that's enough about that. I directed a bunch. I did camera a bunch. I did a decent amount of replay. And obviously I had my hands in kind of just about everything, including graphics. I put together the spreadsheets for those that we were bringing our stats from. So again, one of my favorite things about the job is that I get to do kind of a lot of different things. It's not just one thing over and over and over again. I will say, recently, graphics is getting a little bit tedious because, again, I'm just doing those spreadsheets, which aren't difficult, but it's just kind of a slog. You just got to kind of wade your way through it, and it's not super enjoyable, not super fun. But that was kind of the experience the last 2 weeks, was seeing what issues arise, dealing with them, and just moving forward. So looking forward to this nice week right now. You're seeing this on Tuesday, May 29th, which is the day after Memorial Day. Today is Memorial Day right now. It was Memorial Day, and you're seeing this on Tuesday, May 28th. Forgot that it was 1:19 a.m., gonna be honest. Forgot it was today and not yesterday. But regardless, I have this entire week off. I have a Zoom meeting later today to meet some of my fellow coworkers, teammates, whatever you want to call it, for my summer gig as a film teacher. Basically, I think the technical term is teaching artist, which I like, but I don't hate that term, but it's just easier to say that I'm a film teacher, But yeah, gonna meet. I imagine it'll be a decent amount of familiar faces. Maybe not. I don't know. But gonna hop in that Zoom call later today, technically later on Tuesday, and then got the rest of the week off. Probably will hang out with friends a little bit, play some disc golf, just relax. And then first day of classes is next Monday for the summer gig. So that should be fun. I will keep everybody, apprised of everything that's going on. If anything crazy happens, anything amazing happens, if anything unamazing happens, I typically don't talk about that, but, maybe. But yeah, so hopefully the vlogs will stabilize a little bit more. I know they've been kind of all over the place, especially in terms of scheduling recently. I've just been all over the place, both geographically and mentally and physically. So just a whole lot going on. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this episode of the vlog. I know it was just me talking, but what more do you want? And I will catch all of you next week. But if I don't, have a good one. Peace.